Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Dominick Dejoy, founder of Authoric Digital, B2B paid media agency in New York, working with SaaS, fintech, and complex services companies on their Google and LinkedIn ad campaigns. So we'll learn from him, explore with him why top of funnel is slower and more qualitative, why mid funnel is eroding fast, why bottom of funnel paid search CTRs have climbed 50 to 100%, and how to build trust with patience. Welcome to the show, Dominick.
Yeah, thanks so much, AJ. Happy to be here.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show, Dominick. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people, a lot of B2B marketing people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about B2B marketing, funnel, and much more. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Yeah, of course. So I'll try and be brief, but so I went to kind of unusual. Well, I went to Wesleyan University in Connecticut, which is kind of a unusual, specific to the United States. They have these like small liberal arts colleges with 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 students. So sort of a kind of unusual place, but near New York City, so plugged into that the kind of media scene there. I started out basically in ad tech. In the early mid 2010s, there was a big kind of ad tech boom as media spend was moving away from more traditional media and more online. And at that point, the industry hadn't really consolidated. So there were a lot of different kind of startups going on in New York. So I was at this company called Bounce Exchange, which is now called Wonderkind, kind of at the height of the ad tech boom. Later was at a couple startups, and then went kind of in-house at Preqin, which is a alternative assets infrastructure kind of data provider, and ran their paid search, paid social, and SEO program for a couple years. It was part of kind of just modernizing a team that was kind of modernizing their digital marketing infrastructure. And then at the end of 2021, left to found Authoric Digital. So.
Absolutely, Dominick. So I want to understand, what are you focusing on nowadays with the work that you are doing with your company, and what is it that you want to communicate when you talk about B2B marketing funnels?
Yeah, so we typically work with companies that are that run kind of a sales-led motion. So some of your audience members, I'm sure, know there's two types of kind of acquiring customers. One is through just running a straightforward product-led motion where someone can sign up for a free trial or buy the product directly. There's also a sales-led motion where you're trying to basically get people on calls to kind of help them learn more about the product and hopefully kind of gauge interest, and if there's a fit, make a deal basically. So we typically deal with the second of the two, and we primarily work on the paid side of the funnel. So we don't really do SEO or kind of content marketing, except insofar as it relates to either paid search, so mostly Google ads, but also Bing, or paid social, which in B2B mostly means LinkedIn ads and Twitter.
Absolutely, Dominick. So when you talk of marketing, B2B marketing funnels, why do you say that the old playbook is actually will not work in today's time? B2B marketing funnels are changing drastically, and most teams are still running the playbook that worked 3 years ago. Help us understand this part of it, so that who does these impact most, especially for people who are working on the ground, say small businesses, other people who are wanting to know about these things much better so that they can, get better quality of clients for themselves, even in the B2B space.
Yeah, and this part applies to both B2B and B2C. So it's all basically driven by LLMs, mostly in terms of kind of user behavior. So the first thing we saw in 2022 was that the ability to generate just lots of pseudo personalized text very cheaply and quickly. Obviously led to like massive amounts of spam, but spam that looked less like spam than the spam of 10 or 15 years ago, which was just obviously junk. So the first symptom was that the click to open rates on emails, which is typically like the way in which the middle of the funnel used to work, which is you would acquire an email using some sort of lead magnet or a form, and then you would send emails over time at whatever cadence worked. And that's how you would get people to get on sales calls, right? They just fell off a cliff. So they went from being like almost 12% to under 6%, between 5 and 6%, just in 2022. So that was the first symptom, is email really stopped working as well. A second symptom is that kind of just even moderately coherent content, the ability to produce even moderately coherent written content used to be a major trust signal. LLMs have made that much cheaper to do, so people don't really trust what they read as much anymore. Moreover, they're less interested in reading kind of like free reports and things like that, or submitting their email to get those free reports than they were previously. So opt-in rates on gated content have dropped dramatically. And then this was really a more recent phenomenon since 2024 with the introduction of AI overviews by Google, is that click-through rates on organic search have just been totally decimated. So most websites in the B2B space, I'll talk about the data there, but I'm sure in B2C it's the same, have seen consistent 25 to 50% drops in organic traffic in the last few years, because people are just not clicking on random blog content anymore when they're at the informational stage. They're either going to LLMs to do that initial research, or they're satisfied with the AI overview that Google gives them, and they don't go down into the search engine results page.
Absolutely. So how does it impact those people's businesses, who wanted to get more clients through these blogs, as well as, snippets we used to see? Looks like it is the end of those Google snippets with Google overview. And so how should they look at, these parts of should they leave blogs? Should it work differently? Let's tackle this part of the thing, and then we'll come to the middle of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel.
Yeah, so I think it's not that you shouldn't produce the sorts of content that were going on blogs, 5, 10, 15 years ago. It's just that it should go to a different place. So the content that you used to put in the blog section of your website instead should go on organic social and on YouTube. There are a couple of elements there. YouTube is harder to fake, with it. I mean, of course, there are these AI influencers and things like that, but you can pretty much tell in most cases, right? So it's people trust video and audio more. So the sort of content that 5 or 10 years ago you would have put on a blog, you record a YouTube video instead. That's one thing, and then distribute it as a video on LinkedIn and on Twitter in short form. I mean, because that's what the algorithms are pushing. I think that's one thing. A second thing is that the LLMs that are distributed. I mean, Google's a little bit better, but Google's versions are a little bit better. But the LLMs are just not that great at distinguishing, what's good content versus what's like effectively spam, basically. So I'm not advocating this, but if you wanted to kind of influence LLM results in your favor, that's still quite easy, because unlike Google, which has like 20 years of fighting spam and finding kind of trustworthy sites, ChatGPT, which is still by far the biggest in terms of user base, not quite as good, right? So if your audience is interested in learning more about that, I won't kind of advocate doing it, but you can find information about how to do it, how to run that playbook.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dominic. So for businesses especially, so do you mean that the video part is much more will be the trend in the coming days? That is the future, where because the search and everything else, the information seeking is not working in terms of businesses in the old sense. How should one understand from especially from a B2B business point of view, even for B2B, B2C space also, a lot of businesses are online now, purely
Mhm.
online, and they are reaching their clients. And those clients either could be B2B or even B2C. And and that is where their future lies. And they don't know at the moment how to. Most of the time, people, the talk is about, be relevant in AI search. Beyond that, there is no other talk that is happening as far as I understand.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can just also look at the search engine results page for the terms that your potential customers are likely to search, and it'll kind of tell you, right, what because Google's user. It's not really that search volume has declined that much. It has a bit, but it hasn't declined that much. People are still using Google. It's just what's at the top of the page has changed. So you see a lot of Reddit. You have the AI overview, of course. So, and there are ways of trying to get into that AI overview. And then you see a lot of Reddit, and you see a lot of YouTube videos. So Google's ranking ranking Reddit posts and videos. So the game basically is try to get into the AI overview. If you can't, then try to get into Reddit conversations. And if you can't get into Reddit conversations, then try to get into then try to rank your YouTube videos. Of those, ranking your YouTube videos is the easiest place to start.
Absolutely, absolutely. You talk about, bottom, middle of the funnel. That is where the big problem is. How should help us understand what you are trying to say here?
Yeah, so the content discovery, really top of the funnel information. By top of the funnel, I mean people that are just not really shopping yet, but they are just looking for information about a problem they may want to solve. Middle of the funnel is when people have started to develop some degree of interest in solving the problem. They haven't really defined the parameters for how they want to solve it, but they're looking to solve it, potentially through buying something, potentially through transacting with a business kind of like yours, right? But they aren't really ready to write a check necessarily. They're just looking for more information about vendors. So, like I was saying, what used to work quite well, right, is well, like I said, the top of funnel playbook. I kind of just already explained. It's not super hard. It's just where you do it has changed. The middle of the funnel, it's kind of where you would build trust and establish the fact that you're kind of a go-to vendor, a go-to source of information in the space. The way you used to do that was through ebooks, reports, getting people onto an email list and dripping them over time. No one really opens their email the people don't open their emails at the same rate that they used to even 5 years ago. And these free reports are they're just so easy to make with Claude or with ChatGPT that no one really trusts them anymore, at least, more savvy buyers. So instead of the old approach, one needs to kind of cultivate trust over time, just through kind of recurring appearances on industry podcasts, through video, and through cultivating a relationship with your audience on socials. So for most of our clients, that's LinkedIn. So developing and training the LinkedIn algorithm to get your content in front of the right people, which takes time. It can take 6 to 12 months.
Absolutely. So is this the end of email? If we understand, what about the website? People were talking website is the only place. You are putting more emphasis on social media, whereas people are talking more of that your website is the place to be. Build it so much so well, people come to you and find everything there. How do you calibrate both these two things at the same time?
Well, I think the two can work together. And of course there are, like, with the rise of what's called like programmatic SEO, lots of people, suggesting that the name of the game, right, is to build just this massive website with SEO, with LLM generated content that kind of just ranks for everything. I mean, if you look at the data, there are a lot of case studies on this online, right? Whereas it is effective in getting a lot of traffic quickly, but Google catches, especially if you go outside of if you're a kind of a relatively new site. By relatively new, I mean like last few years, and you don't have a lot of kind of broad authority, as in you're not like a news site, and you try and go outside of the core, 50 to 100 topics that are directly related to what your website and service is about, you'll get a brief pop for like 3 to 6. I mean, by brief, I mean 3 to 6 months in terms of the amount of traffic you'll drive. But Google will figure that out, and you will get just like destroyed, and it will become. And I've seen this in. I don't work on SEO, but a lot of my clients do SEO. I've seen this in some of my clients' sites, and they just get that after they get the sugar high of 6 months of a lot of traffic, and then they can't even rank for like things that are directly related to their service. So it's a dangerous approach, in my opinion.
Absolutely. What about email? Will that continue to be as important, or should one, start moving away from that?
Well, I think I mean, click to open rates, right, have dropped from like around 12 to 6% for B2B in 2022, and they haven't really recovered. They've recovered slightly, but still in around the 6% range. It's not that email is completely going away. I don't think it's the channel that it once was. And in terms of course, once you're at a transactional stage, when you're like kind of negotiating terms and things like that, email is going to be like the main way things get done still. But in terms of like building the relationship with the prospect, it's not what it once was, and it needs to be combined with other touch points. What those touch points are varies between industry, but for my clients, it's mostly LinkedIn and Twitter.
Absolutely. Let's understand the bottom of the funnel, marketing funnel. That is also you are quite positive about. Tell us about that. How bottom of the funnel is hotter and more expensive, but still works the way it's always worked. Help us understand from that point of view, especially from B2B perspective, also for a lot of businesses who are into B2C.
Yeah, so I mean, click-through rates is like the percentage of the people that kind of run if we're talking about Google, right, who run a search that actually click through onto a page. Overall, they've just been getting crushed, right? So 60% of Google searches now end with 0 clicks. People are just satisfied with the AI overview, right? But at the bottom of the funnel, right, you see the opposite trend. So in the last 5 years, if we're talking, just overall paid, I mean, typically when people buy traffic through paid search, they're buying bottom of the funnel terms if they're doing it in the smart way. You've seen in the past 5 years, you've seen the click-through rates go the opposite direction, not as dramatically, but from like 5.9% to close to 7%. So that's a pretty big jump. It's an almost, it's roughly a 40% jump. So why is that, right? In part due to the kind of risk so Google introduced these AI overviews, but on more transactional terms, kind of with more purchase intent. They often don't serve the AI overview, so it doesn't affect bottom of the funnel as much. That's one factor. A second factor is that over the last 10 years, Google has really started blending the sponsored results more and more into the regular organic results, such that now you don't even the individual ads are no longer tagged as ads. There's just an overall header that says sponsored, and it eats up like almost the entire above the fold for places where ads are running. And the third thing is that Google has started introducing ads into the AI overviews themselves. So as a result, the paid search has not been cannibalized in the same way as SEO.
Absolutely. So what is the solution? You talk about only solution is to build trust, familiarity over long periods at the top. and capture intent cleanly at the bottom. Explain this for us, for small businesses, for online businesses. How should they understand it? Do they have the time in today's time?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a small business, right, you're probably more likely to be serving in a kind of local market, which is obviously which is usually a lot less competitive. So whereas like someone who's trying to scale a venture funded startup needs to be much more aggressive. If you're in a local market, you can pace things a little bit more slowly, and you don't have to be as neurotic about it. But it's basically the same playbook. So instead of just trying to capture emails so that you can aggressively market to people with email marketing follow-up, I suggest that people build trust over time with mostly video. Some text content is fine too. That's distributed primarily through social media. And then when users engage with that content and show a degree of interest in kind of what you're trying to promote, then you engage with them within the medium that they engage with you. So instead of trying to pull them over to email right away, you develop a relationship within LinkedIn or within Twitter. And maybe at a certain point, it becomes useful to have direct messages within LinkedIn and within Twitter. And then only when it really kind of makes sense do you try and pull them off the platform. That's one side. That's one side of things. It's kind of the top and middle of the funnel. At the bottom of the funnel, I see a lot of clients think that they should, due to these LLMs, like kind of cut their paid search budget, and I think that's a really silly thing to do because the data just suggests exactly the opposite. Instead, one should be investing more and more in kind of transactional bottom of the funnel traffic. The problem, of course, is that there's only so many people that are trying to buy the thing that you're selling at a given time. So you can't rely only on that. But it's one of the few things that's still working in the way, few things from the playbook from 10 or 15 years ago that not only is still working, but is working better than it was 10 or 15 years ago. So.
Absolutely. So where do you come into the picture, Dominick? Where does your company, Osric Digital, comes into the picture?
So we work with companies that are basically trying to, they've figured out one channel or two channels, and they're trying to kind of amplify their presence. So, in B2B SaaS or just kind of complex services, a lot of times they figured out how to do kind of direct. The founder has a sales background, or one of the founders has a sales background. They figured out how to get clients through speaking at conferences or through kind of cold outreach or something that's kind of more a sales-led motion. So on the paid social side, well, just the social side in general, we work on giving them a framework to create a kind of content plan so that they can start being on the social channels where their audience is and developing a relationship with prospects, before they necessarily enter the buying cycle. And then in terms of the buying cycle, we get them, we help them kind of capture demand that already exists through, basically just either building or optimizing Google Ads and Bing Ads campaigns, which are, you'd be surprised, but there's so many accounts that are just, horribly managed that are like, if you don't know how to manage a paid search campaign, like you haven't spent a lot of time learning, Google will try to convince you to do lots of like very, very silly things. Whether that's nefarious or not, I don't mean to kind of comment, but yeah, I mean, we it should be your highest ROI play, and if it's not, then you should work with someone who can make it your highest ROI play, and that's kind of where we come in.
Absolutely. There is so much to learn about all this from you, Dominick, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn all about this, as well as engage with you as client. What's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so the easiest way is on my LinkedIn. So my company LinkedIn is just LinkedIn Osric Digital. I post a little bit more on my personal LinkedIn, so that's Dominick Dejoy, just spelled as it is here. And then my company website, osricdigital.com. We've started, even though I've been talking all about how kind of blog traffic is decaying. We do have some interesting case studies and kind of how-to content on the website blog as well. There's an FAQ section, so people can feel free to check that out also.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
All right, thanks, AJ. Thanks for having me on.